Welcome to Flesh and Pod, a Flesh and Blood podcast, breaking down weekly news and notes from the tournament scene, community drama, game strategy, and more. And now, here are your hosts, Darick and Logan.
Hello, and welcome to this two-member, already starting off strong, I see, episode 84 of Flesh and Pod. My name is Logan. I am your host, and with me, as always, is Orthodox Jedi, Darick Oswald. Darick, I know that you got up to quite a bit in Flesh and Blood this week. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
So this was a really interesting but fun week for me for Flesh and Blood because I managed to somehow keep my impersonation of Abby going strong, but also was still very involved with Flesh and Blood related activities. So believe it or not, despite me harping on people all weekend long to draft, I actually did not play in any Flesh and Blood events this weekend for the pre-release. I tried very hard, but it just it wasn't in the cards for me. I did, however, spend a lot of wonderful time with many members of the Flesh and Blood community. So the folks from the Realm were throwing an event in Ohio. I drove down with my family, so I took my wife and my two children, and Flake was there, Elaine was there, the three floating guys are there. It's my understanding, Flake and the three floating crew are also doing some content stuff this week, like live on site and making a bunch of fun stuff. But we all hung out this weekend and we had a wonderful time. Jordan and Abby were there, speaking of them as well. And it was a wonderful time. I love my Flesh and Blood family, but I myself personally didn't get to play. Now, I did see many other people play. I did some coaching. I watched some games. I watched Jordan teach Flake how to play Alpha Clash as well, which was kind of funny. But I didn't get to play because Saturday we were supposed to draft on two different occasions, and I tried to round everybody up, but we couldn't get the full 8. And then on Sunday when they were firing the pods, due to some difficulties, it was starting later than we had originally anticipated, and I had some events planned with my family, and so by the time it had started, I wouldn't have been able to complete one, and I didn't want to draft and drop because that ruins everybody else's experience, so like I could have participated, but I would have felt really bad if I did that. So yeah, really weird but fun weekend, right? Like lots of Flesh and Blood community stuff, but I didn't actually play.
I guess I did the inverse then. I was not in Ohio, much to my chagrin and sadness, but I did play a bunch of Flesh and Blood. I did 3 pre-releases plus my normal Thursday armory. I went 11-2 on the weekend, so respectable. 3-0 in Blitz with Kasai because I wanted the cold foil, so now she's back in mothballs until such time as she can come back out again. Then first pre-release was a 2-1. I was a scuffed motherfucker I was in 2 super scuffed fucking drafts. This one was, I was between 2 inexperienced drafters, just like had not done this before. And I'm thinking I take like a pack one, pick one generic, just like I want to see what happens, right? See what the first card is out of the pack that comes to me. And there was a whole bunch of, like, every Leviathan card was in the pack, and they were like 2 7s, and I'm like, and I'm like, okay, great. Start that point. Well, then like 3 picks later, there's no Leviathan stuff. I'm like, that's weird. Okay. And then we hit into pack 2, and I'm like, okay, so what's the person to my left doing? I'm not sure what's going on. I'm kind of in between 2 heroes right now. It doesn't feel great. I'm going to take the best card in the pack and see what happens, which was just a Herald. And then immediately get past a foil Herald of your edition. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm glad I read the room, but still ended up with single cracked bauble prism, but went 2-1 with single cracked bauble prism. Playing the cops is not fun, by the way. I don't enjoy the playing as the police. I've never like everything about the Police. Like, I don't like Sting as a musical performer. Stuart Copeland is kind of overrated. Their songs are just formulaic and boring. So when people ask me why I don't like the Police, like that's why. Like it's mostly that. But so then the next draft was another just this time I did like I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna I saw Leviah show up early again coming from my left. I'm like, please don't fuck me this time. Well, it was a 6-person pod because it was only 12 people total, so we did 2 6s. And in this 6-person pod, there was one Leviah, that was me. There's one Bolton, who was my only loss on the day, and 4 Prisms. Now, the total number of cracked baubles in this pod was 19 that had to be distributed between the 4 Prism players. It wasn't great.
Yeah.
Nope, that's not ideal. And then the third one was, again, I ended up playing the cops because in pack 1, I take a pick 1 red Stony Wootenhog because it's a good pick 1, right? Like it's a good first pick.
Yeah.
And then get past foil Herald of Erudition. Like, well, there is no clearer signal in the world than the person to my right passing me a foil Herald of Erudition in pack 1 that says you are going to be in Prism now. So I guess I played the cops again. I do have 2 foil cold foil Vinsets now though, so that's nice, I guess. Yeah, that's always good to have. One of the players that won one of the pods ended up winning the pod, which, you know, obviously get the cold foil off of that. And then out of prize packs, opened a Leviah Redeemed, as well as a Marvel Angel. So it's like, can you run any fucking hotter? Like, you didn't open the Fabled. That happened like the night before. That was it. Like, that is just the run hots, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, overall it was enjoyable. I'm glad that I really don't have a reason to draft Monarch again anytime soon, really. I mean, I believe we're doing Monarch draft as one of the options for Skirmish when it comes around in one of the events here. It's either draft or sealed, I can't remember. But other than that, it's like it was fun to do a few times. I'm glad I've did it a few times. But like, I'm in no rush to draft Monarch again. I know one of the listener questions that we received that we never got to due to, the difficulties that we had last week, just even getting an episode on fucking wax.
Yeah.
I don't know if people understand the Frankenstein job I had to do to even get that episode to a point that you could kind of listen to it. But it was me screaming it's alive when I was done. But one of the listener questions was, how do you feel about Monarch draft going into the pre-release? And I was like, well, shit, that one kind of is to the wayside now. But overall, like, I don't mind Monarch draft. I know that a lot of people are very high on it. I think a lot of that is those people that are high on it. That's where they started, was their first events were Monarch Limited. And so there's kind of a little bit of a rose-colored glasses feel when that happens. But at the same time, it's okay. I would rather draft Monarch than Arcane Rising as far as a format to draft. But overall, I'd rather do it than Uprising too. But that might just be because of the number of times I drafted fucking Uprising. But overall, like, I think it's fine. So yeah, and they ask that pick order and where you prioritize. Usually it was just kind of described it, just kind of stay open, do the thing. Do you have any thoughts on Monarch draft at all? Have you ever done one? I actually don't even know. Have you ever drafted Monarch?
I have drafted Monarch. I'm one of the weirdos that really likes it because I think that it is probably more balanced than it looks on the surface. I know that like the reductive take is that there's really only 2 heroes that you can target, and then you might end up with like one Bolton because they're the only Bolton in a pod or whatever that can do well, but all of my experiences with Monarch Draft has actually been pretty well balanced out. And I'm also, maybe it was just because I have a bit of an infatuation with, playing cards and going again, but I actually really like, I really like Chain, even in the draft. And I know a lot of people are kind of like low on him, but I feel like because you're usually one or, maybe even the only, but one of two, usually people in your pod that even attempts to go Chain, you kind of get your pick of whatever you want. And, Runeblade's still really good, it turns out. So
Shocking.
I don't know. I really enjoy it. I actually really like Monarch Draft. It's really hard for me to pick like my favorite draft sets because like I love Welcome to Rathe. I actually really like Draft for Arya once they made the Briar changes. And I like Monarch and I like Outsiders. So, Uprising, I think overall was like a really quality set, but I think the draft and sealed experiences, not the best comparatively to the others, but it's probably just because I hold the others in such high regard. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, I brought this up over the weekend when I was talking to somebody about Monarch Draft and being, kind of happy not doing it anymore. It's like, I understand that I'm also very picky because I did like my majority of my competitive Magic life occurred during the best draft sets that Magic ever put together. And so the fact that that's what I was drafting most of the time, and that's my background and what I'm like, the type of interaction, type of quality I'm used to, where you're just not always picking the best card, you're drafting decks, is why I have such a sort of a super, I wouldn't call it jaded, but I'm more of a connoisseur, similar to yourself, of draft formats. And so like, one of the set I drafted the most early on or the block I drafted the most early on in Magic was Invasion Planeshift Apocalypse, which is still holds up today as some of the best draftable content that they ever made. And I would put it right up there. But the scary part with Flesh and Blood is I would put Welcome to Rathe way up there with those draft sets, with those sets too. It's just like the other things aren't quite as good. I do agree with you with Chain. I do believe that Chain is the hardest hero to pilot in Monarch Draft by a pretty wide margin. I feel like Boltyn is the hardest one to build while drafting because you need the requisite number of things to start to have charge stapled to them, as well as the requisite number of things to pump your weapons or to pump your attacks so that you can give them go again in case of no blocks. Because the worst thing for a Boltyn player to hear is, no blocks. It's like, shit. Well, okay, take two. Okay, good turn. That's the worst thing for them to hear. And once you kind of figure out how to play into that, unless it's a V for the Vanguard, when you're just like, right, just kill the shit out of me, I guess this is fine. You're kind of in that spot where Boltyn is very hard to draft, not so hard to play, but much harder to draft. And Levia is Blood Debt Management, and Prism is when do you pop your Dreamweavers. Like that's kind of it. But Chain is very difficult to manage your shackles and shit and make sure that you're in a good spot to not die and not be fatigued. That's
I think
a difficult balance.
I think that the biggest issue is that most people, if you're used to playing any form of constructed chain, really, especially CC, but even Blitz to some degree, usually it's just shackles go burr, and that's not the case with draft chain. Like you're basically playing the other rune blades, but with the ability to give something go again if you need it, but it's not like a mandatory you're going out of your way to shackle every turn sort of thing. Like, and in some matchups, you actively avoid doing it if you can help it. It kind of depends, but I still really enjoy him. I think that his access specifically to the arcane damage, again, still just makes things awkward. It's the classic rune blade play, right? You throw chain at him, and if you can trigger even just like a seeds and get some damage leaked through, you're probably fine.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's usually the play pattern, and it is until the turns that do more that you actually want to start shackling. So you also can get blown out by spell void, which sucks. Like, sometimes it's okay, I'm not going to seeds right now, I'm not going to shackle right now because this thing's going to deal an arcane damage off the seeds and give itself go again, so I attack with it. What is like Rifted Torment, I think. And it's like, okay, spell void the seeds, block. Okay, like that's your turn.
Mm-hmm.
And now I get to do things. And if it's the right deck, like, it does a lot. So yeah, that's it feels like making those little micro decisions in chain is the hardest part. And so I guess that's how I rank this. Like the default, people calling Prism the default, I think is also something of a misnomer, because knowing, well, one, operating with Iris of Reality and knowing that, like, a lot of people like just draft Red Heralds. It's like, well, you're turning your Iris into a piece of shit that doesn't do anything when you do mono Red Heralds. So usually I'm trying to draft as many blues as I can to go with some pretty big heralds, so that when I am doing this stuff, I can like, okay, I can threaten Red Herald, but I can also threaten, a Spectral Shield that's attacking for 4 over and over and over again. If I can just block and keep a blue, I can just block out, attack for 4 every turn until I get something better to do. So there's a lot of planning goes in that too. I think it's a deeper format than people give it credit for, but I'm just kind of glad to not have to.
I mean, that's fair.
Yeah, that's all. That's enough about Monarch. They shook up Blitz a bit.
A bit, at least for the upcoming season, anyway.
Let's go through the changes and discuss the ramifications here. So yes, it is only for Skirmish season for now, but there's now your card pool is now 52 cards, so one more than it was prior. The bigger things here is that you no longer have to present a 40 card deck. It can be over 40, and you can have non-equipment cards in your inventory as well. So you have a Blitz sideboard now, just for Skirmish season. But I feel like if these changes do well, and they see a higher hero spread in Skirmish winning, that this is going to be permanent. So first off, I know you're not the world's biggest Blitz player.
No, I love it.
Well, sure, but sorry, you're not the world's biggest Flesh and Blood player, because you just kind of don't do it. You love it, but you just don't do it. Like, I also love eating ice cream, but it makes my stomach fucking feel like it's going to burst out of my body, so I just don't do it. Does Flesh and Blood make you feel like you're going to burst out of your body? You know what? Don't answer that. And so what are your feelings on these changes? What do you think?
So if you want my honest opinion, I actually think that this is a natural test to see if this is going to be enough to also balance out Drone of Brutality that was recently re-added to the format. Because I think perhaps, at least internally, there may have been some conversations about the fact that you have some heroes, whether it's Riptide or Fatigue Uzuri, or there's a few others that, they're very well positioned with Icelander and Oldhim leaving the format, where they can go heavy on the D-reacts and just play dodge Kano. And if they don't hit Kano, then they have really good matchups across the board, because they can run, these D-reacts, and other classes that might try to run stuff to stop that might also then not normally want to run those in the main deck, because then they also get hurt in the Kano matchup, where that might, perhaps be a good matchup for them, right? Like, we're in this really weird spot with Blitz where, yeah, you have the equipment so you can like throw in your AB, but just being able to have access to AB isn't necessarily the same as being prepared for arcane damage, because you have to have a certain number of blues and you don't want to have too many defense reactions, especially if we're talking about the ones that everyone immediately thinks of, Fate Foreseen, Sink Below, etc., because those are red pitch do nothings in a Kano matchup. If you draw them, you're just, all right, how do I get this out of my hand as fast as possible? So by giving us access to a sideboard, I think you are allowing some classes to now throw some of those defensive reactions into their sideboard, still have a game plan, and still include Arcane Barrier, but you're not drawing dead if you go into the Kano matchup, because you can get those D-reacts out of your deck, or get more blues in if you're going the AB route, etc., etc. It's not a ton of flexibility, but like, let's be honest, how many times have you built a Blitz deck and, some heroes, they don't need the full 11 equipment and cards, right? They want like 2. And so that's why sometimes even with these like top finishing Blitz lists, you see, people running like Gambler's Gloves. Why? Because they can. It's not because like they're worried about the Reiner matchup or whatever. It's literally because they just have a slot, right? Like, I've seen some weird things in lists. So you give some people some flexibility, a little bit more agency, and you don't make things as polarized. I don't know, I really like it, but I do feel like it's a big part of this. Like, right now it's kind of Kano, with no Icelander, right? It's like Kano is kind of like that wild card. He's gonna be played in Blitz, like you have to plan for him, but in doing so, you hinder some other matchups. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have some heroes that are just playing dodge Kano, and now they might have the opportunity to be a bit more flexible into that one as well.
Yeah, this felt like so it felt a little targeted. It does feel like they're targeting specifically Kano and Kasai. That's my thought process, because now you can put extra D-reacts in for the Kasai matchup, and then every deck, I believe now, just has room for 2 Oasis Respite. Like, you just have that now because you can. Truth be told, with like even playing Kasai as much as I do, it's a 50 card deck. I have 51 in the entire loadout, but there's one piece in there that I just never use. Like, it's for no matchups. It's there because I have a slot, and it has to be equipment. So it's just random piece of equipment, right? And now it's like, okay, that's going to come out, and there's going to be 2 Oasis Respites. That's it in the sideboard of Kasai, because I had 3 slots. Like, they just go there now, and then two reds will come out for 2 Oasis Respites to just have that as something there for the Kano matchup. But like I said, you're going to, I think there's 2 things at play here. One, you're going to find out if there are decks that feel comfortable shaving equipment slots to add more flexibility to the deck, which is entirely possible. You're also going to find out if this is going to be make decks like Chain in Blitz being able to go above 40 cards be a little too potent, or Yoji, or any of these other decks that want to turtle up or use their deck as a resource. Like, is that going to be harmful? Over the top Vinset, is that going to be a thing where you're banishing cards, but you can kind of stack up a kind of an OTK type of turn? So I feel like I love the experiment. I feel like it's going to stick. I do feel like that the numbers are probably going to get tweaked a little bit along the way, but ultimately I think this is a very good starting point, and I'm very interested in it. I have seen some interesting opinions that I do want to make sure that I'm giving voice to both sides of this, that have said that this kind of takes away from the technique of deck building in Blitz, where you're running some cards that you know are going to be bad into matchups, but you need them for the things that are your worst matchups, and understanding where that counterplay is a skill unto itself. I completely hear that and feel that. I've always played 2 blue Steelblade Shunts in Kasai because I need them for things like the Guardian matchups, but they are also blues into Kano. And I would never play the reds I would never play the yellows anyway, but I would never play the reds, because it's just, you can't afford having another red in the deck. I don't think that'll change with this, but that's kind of like what they're talking about, the deck construction technique. And I completely understand. I agree with them. I wholeheartedly agree but I do believe that you were never able to make your sort of auto loss feeling matchups not feel like an auto loss, regardless of what you did with your 40 cards, unless you made all your other matchups way worse. So I get it, but I ultimately think that this is the kind of change that we want to see, and we want to see experiment with, so that we can have a format that, I don't want to using bad terms because I don't have anything else to go with, but like sort of the grindier, sweatier players won't, be up in arms about Blitz being at Worlds, and stuff like that, because now it feels more like what they would call a real format. I did forget to put this on the show notes, but speaking of Worlds, do you know where it is?
I do.
Okay. Where?
Good talk.
Great. Yeah, there's still no Worlds announcement.
It is across the Atlantic. It is in Europe.
I am very tempted to open up a book on where Worlds is going to be and have the US, anywhere in the US, as like a plus 400 option. Just because if they can't get a venue nailed down in Europe or whatever, I mean, assuming that's the problem, I don't know. But that's the only thing I can think of that would delay this announcement, is if they just can't get venues.
I mean, I can actually legitimately think of other things that could have delayed it.
Go on. Is it a war in Europe? Because
I mean, so yeah, sure, there's a war in Europe, but first of all, I want to say I have no actual inside information. When I said yeah earlier, that's entirely a bit. Okay, LSS won't.
Our entire show's a bit. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
They won't. They won't hire me yet, so they're sure as hell not giving me inside info, right? Yeah. So I want to be very clear that this is like entirely just not even speculation, just like we'll call it a thought experiment. However, let's just say you were considering running it back to France, because we already did it once there, but people seem to like it, but you wanted it to be, Paris, bigger venue, bigger whatever.
Sure.
I don't know if, other folks are aware of this if you're a US listener, but there's quite a bit of unrest there right now. A fair amount of, protesting, riots and whatever. I could see that being something that could impact it. Like, even if they still had the ability to book the venue, right? You do have to put the, safety of the players in mind, and like, are people going to be able to get there, transportation interruption, etc. And so, maybe that was something that they really wanted, or maybe they did book the venue, but they have like X date to back out of it, and they're kind of watching, before they make the official announcement to see like, hey, do we think that the protest will die down a bit or whatever, right? But like, there are some things happening in Europe right now, just that could impact those things. So, yeah, I want the announcement just as much as the next person, because obviously international travel is very hard to plan, but I could theoretically see some things impacting that.
Yeah. It just, if you were, I mean, I guess where there has to be some sort of, for lack of a better term, drop dead date, right? There has to be a date that they have circled on a calendar that says World's announcement has to happen here. I thought that date would be in June, like point blank, and we're past that. That was, and maybe that's projection on my part, because I'm out on Worlds now. Like, I'm not going to go. It's just, unless somebody is going to book all of my travel for me as soon as the announcement drops, it's not going to work. And that sucks. I had fully intended on going, but lead time is very important in the life that I live. And that's just, yeah, if somebody's going to give me a free trip to Europe, I'm going to fucking find a way to make it work. Let's be real here.
Yeah.
But if it comes down to me having to scramble a bit, because again, the US it's not the easiest thing in the world. We're now going to be we're talking about November paid time off in America, which is not easy. Once you start factoring in the Thanksgiving holidays and stuff like that, it starts to get hard. But like, let's say that it's November, let's say it's the week before Thanksgiving, right? It's November 21st. In 11 days from this recording, 9 days from when this will go up, you're going to hit the 4-month mark. They recommend booking 6 months in advance for international travel most of the time. So we're way behind here. Now, I don't want them to put Worlds in the US specifically because I want it to feel like a world event. I really like the idea of it being in Europe, because embracing the global aspect of the game matters a ton. It really does. Ideally, I would want Worlds in Europe this year, Worlds in Japan next year, and then bring it to not San Jose the year after that. Not in a tent in San Jose, but we're getting to a point where a lot of US players are going to just have to make a decision soon about whether or not they can just attend, and whether or not how much of their life that they kind of want to put on hold waiting for it. And that's going to be really hard for some people. And I really empathize, I empathize with everybody in the situation, because this can't be easy for LSS either. Like, they know everybody wants that announcement, and they have to sit there and either wait out, like you're talking about, what, with unrest in the different countries and the variety of places in Europe, or they're going to have to just say, on this date, we're announcing somewhere, and so we need to lock that in by this other date, right? But I don't know, man. It's a lot. It really is a lot. However, I do know of some events that are coming up, and that's always nice. Yeah. So we do have the Salt Lake City Brawl Weekend with Kayfabe Cards coming up in 25 days, like 3 weeks, basically. August 4th through 6th, you do get a Blitz Armory on Friday night at Kayfabe Cards in Salt Lake City, Utah. You also get a Classic Constructed 5K on Saturday, followed by a Blitz Battle Hardened on Sunday. As per always, there will be a speakeasy party on Saturday night, with the details still to be determined. I'm thinking, you know what? I'm pretty well out of places that I can start suggesting as memes. Are they going to go spelunking? Like, I don't know. Are there caves in Utah to go to?
That's actually fair. I am not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. A spelunking party does sound kind of fun, though. Not gonna lie. Like, that does have some juice to it. I did make an executive decision in my life to stop trying to be two places at once. It is not working out for me because, weirdly enough, I'm only one person. I think that's, I mean, I weigh the same as two, but I'm actually just one. So I'm going to go ahead and I will not be in Salt Lake City. I am just going to enjoy all 4 days of Gen Con instead. That trip, the Gen Con thing was planned long before I knew the dates on Salt Lake City, and I was going to try to stretch myself to do both, but there's been some real bandwidth issues with me trying to fit too many things in. You can only fit 5 pounds of monkey shit in a 5-pound bag. You cannot fit 10 pounds of monkey shit in a 5-pound bag, no matter how hard you try. And I have tried. Oh, I have tried. There is shit everywhere. There is monkey shit in my hair, in my driveway. It's in the carpet. It's just, it was a terrible attempt. However, I will be at, as I believe Darick will as well, at the 20K Realm Invitational weekend in December. That is December 1st through 3rd in Columbus at the Greater Columbus Convention Center. There will be a 20K invitational that starts on Friday. Hopefully I stay qualified. Right now I'm in a pretty good spot. So hopefully missing the missing the Salt Lake City Brawl doesn't fuck me. And then there's also the 5K Brawl on Saturday, which that number could change. You know, you never know. With a 2K Blitz on Sunday, that number could change. That dollar amount will not go down. I can tell you that much. But that dollar amount may go up. But this weekend is starting to look more like it's going to be just kind of a total celebration of card gaming. So if you are a person listening to this that is out, I wouldn't say out on Flesh and Blood, but you have other things that you prioritize that you would travel for, this may be the event for you, because a lot of things are going to be happening. They've they've enlisted some of the more talented and more creative people in the Flesh and Blood community to come up with some really crazy shit to do. And things are going to get a little wild. So if you want to be a part of the types of stories that we tell on a regular basis on this show, that sound like they'd be a lot of fucking fun if you were only there, show up. Because that's the type of weekend we're looking at. It's going to be a weekend where if you want to be a character in one of the stories, show up to this event, because you will become one of the characters in all these stories that you hear us talk about. Are you casting that one? Do you know yet?
I mean, I don't know if I'm allowed to say, but
so you are. Okay, good.
I'm confident that I'm going to be there that weekend.
Fucking Smuckers. God damn it. I think you're allowed to say whatever you want to. I don't know. It's like I said. It's
okay. Well,
this entire show's a bit.
I mean, if I'm allowed to say whatever I want, then I'll just say that arcane damage can't melt steel beams.
Oh, we're going that route. Like,
yeah.
So you're saying that Kano is not responsible for 9/11?
I'm saying that, it's not Kano's fault.
It's an inside job.
It was the cops.
I mean, let's be honest.
The story was an illusion. That's all I'm saying.
Oh no! Why?
Because you let me.
I know. There are so many days that I just hate that I love you.
Yeah. But, well, welcome to my life, because there were so many days that I just hate that I'm me.
Well, that's a club that we both belong to, so that's totally reasonable. Let's pull down some listener questions. We've taken a little bit of a break, so we've made a little bit of a backlog. I do blame some of it on the technical issues we faced last week, because we did answer some.
Yeah, I mean, it was very difficult to answer questions when we couldn't stay connected and we had issues. In fact, I'm actually crossing my fingers. I've only disconnected while recording this one once so far, but it was so brief I don't even know if Logan noticed. But I definitely got a notice that I disconnected at one point.
No. Like luckily, like I said, luckily these files record in such a way that as long as it doesn't disconnect me as well, we should be fine. And I did not have a notice. But now that you mentioned that, you just made me so fucking nervous again. Like, I don't want to have to do this all again and then have. It's okay. So inside baseball a little bit for the listeners. No, just brief inside baseball. We recorded last week a 2-hour banger of an episode, but we lost half of Mikey's content. So just stone unusable. Had to throw it all away. So we re-recorded it, and somewhere in the middle of that recording, Mikey, we saw the same issue with Mikey pop up that did the time before. And so we stopped the recording and we lost like a couple minutes of Mikey, but he didn't really say anything during those couple of minutes. So I was able to kind of stitch the points together again. But then the Zencastr, the program I used for all this, decided to just shit itself out of nowhere.
Yeah, that was fun.
And so we lost, like, everything was kind of staggered in this weird time stretch, and then we lost Mikey one more time. So I had to so if the audio sounded really, really weird last week in any spots, it's because I had to stitch that shit together to somehow make sense with the words that everybody was saying in spots. Some of that was stitched together out of context. Like the thing that somebody was saying only just sort of matched what was going on. They were not actually responding to that, but it was the best way that I had to make the audio work. So it is by far the weirdest goddamn episode that I've ever had to deal with on this show ever. But because I'm a stubborn, hard-headed fucking moron, I could not lose the streak of 83 in a row, because I know that LSS and picking who receives spoiler cards values consistency. Moving on. Listener questions. First one's from Vintox. He's actually got quite a few of these queued up. I know he does because he told me. But this one is the one we did answer on that 2-hour banger of an episode. And I'm just kind of sick that we lost it. But
we answered this? Prove
we
it.
did. I still have the audio files. Like I can do that. If that's what you want.
No, we got listeners waiting. Let's not get into the weeds here.
You've got piece of shit. Okay. As Flesh and Blood continues to mature, I'm starting to hear more people talk about Cube, Jordan's squeal in the background. What are your thoughts about Cube and Flesh and Blood versus other games, and what are your quick tips for building an effective and fun Cube experience? So Flesh and Blood Cube is quite good because any cube you build is a tailored draft experience, right? You are trying to cultivate or curate the best possible draft experience that you can think of, so you can do anything you want. So Jordan's cube is a 3-hero cube of Dorinthia, Bravo, and Viscerai. And ideally, in an 8-person cube, it's going to be a 8-person draft. It's going to be a 3-3-2. His cube is built so that every card in the cube is drafted. So there are no stragglers in an 8-person draft. There are no cards left in the box. Everything's going into the draft. And then also one of the cooler things about his cube, and I believe this was my idea, but Jordan's more than welcome to correct me if I'm wrong. But what he does is, in between each pack, all the equipment for the draft that is not weapons, so all the armor that's available in the draft is then laid out, and then a Rochester draft occurs of the equipment. So 2 rounds of Rochester draft. So Rochester draft means that everything's face up on the table, and then starting with a randomized player, they pick a piece and it goes around the table once, and then the last person picks 2 pieces, and then it comes back around again. So a snake draft. Rochester is done face up. So what happens in that draft, in the equipment draft, is a lot of times you get sort of perfect information into what the other players are already drafting. Now, granted, that isn't necessarily going to be true, because somebody could easily take Tunic and then wheel back for Snapdragons. You know, who knows at that point in time? You probably aren't in Bravo, but you could still be in either of the other two. And you may still be in Bravo too, because there's no such thing as Guardian boots. But if somebody takes Tectonic Plating or not Mask of Momentum, Grasp of the Arknight, you know what they're doing. And so now in Pack 2, with that information, you can adjust how you're drafting, or hate draft, or whatever. So it kind of builds another layer of strategy into the draft itself outside of deck construction. Then in his cube, you play your rounds out. Whoever wins the draft then gets to sign their hero. And once all 8 copies of each hero is signed, or are signed, that hero will get retired from the cube, and then another hero will be introduced. So it's a really cool experience with his. I know he's done a ton of content on it. He has links for people that are super interested in what he's done with his cube. I would highly advise looking into it. I also know that our friend of the show, friend of the podcast, friend of humanity, Tommy Fresh, aka Tommy Dong, also has done quite a bit of cubing, and his is also a very interesting cube. I've not played it, but I've watched it quite a few, like 2 or 3 times now. And I think that he's also a very good resource to talk about cubing with. How does it stand up to other games? That's the beautiful part about Cube, is it stands up as much as you want it to. It is all curated. So the cube will do whatever you design it to do after you keep refining and refining and refining. If somebody put Vintage Cube from Magic, which is my favorite version of Magic Cube, in front of me next to like Jordan's Flesh and Blood cube, I'd probably draft Jordan's cube, to be honest. I do think that it is such a good experience that he's put together that I would just rather do that. So yeah, I think that it stands up very well. I think it's a very good game for cubing, and I've definitely been tempted more than once to just build Jordan's cube. I could just do it, but have avoided it so far because I just feel like it'd be a little bit of a ripoff too, and I don't really want to do that. Do you have anything to add, Darick?
Yes. If you are somebody who has a limited collection, because I do understand that Flesh and Blood is an expensive game, and perhaps you are not somebody who has access to a bunch of cards and staple cards for several different classes. Something that I was talking about actually this weekend when I wasn't playing Flesh and Blood, but when I was talking with many members of the community, was how cool it might be to put together cubes based on your preferred class, because a lot of people will own a lot of stuff for whatever their class is, right? So if you are somebody who loves Runeblade, well, it turns out we have more than enough Runeblades where you could put in stuff for running, 4-5 Runeblades in a cube, right?
Just 4, right?
Well, we have Vinset, Chain, Briar, Viscerai, and I think that's it.
Yeah, I think it's just the 4.
I think it's just the 4. Yeah.
Still, that's enough.
So far. That's more than enough. One of the ones that we talked about this weekend specifically, because I love really bad 90s movies, was the Three Ninjas cube.
Fi, Katsu,
and
Ira?
Benji.
You gonna put Benji in? Okay.
No. When I mentioned it, it was actually Ira, Katsu, Benji, just because the
draconic. Yeah.
Okay. But again, like if you wanted to expand it to 4 and you wanted to throw some spice in, you can put it so that there's not as much draconic stuff and go still more, ninja heavy, but still make Fi an option if you just give them just enough juice or whatever. There's a lot of different ways that you can do it, but really what I wanted to point out is that there's not many classes that don't have, especially when you're talking about young heroes, a lot of options available. So if you're somebody who just has a limited collection, don't be afraid to be like, hey, my cube's just, the Guardian Cube, and you throw in Valda and have a good time. And
Yoji, Valda, Bravo, Oldhim,
Yep.
if you want, or just do the other 3. Yeah, that all works. Like it works great too. I mean, the only things I would avoid are things like Wizard Cube. Probably not doing that one. That seems awful. But like you can even dual class a cube, right? You can make it Brute Illusionist and have KO Rhinar, Prism, right? You could do.
I mean, I'm a big fan if you're going to do a dual class. Personally, I think Assassin Ranger is a good one.
That's
just because
there's tension between the two classes.
You have tension between the two, but you also have like access to the dual class cards. Similarly, you can do like Assassin, Ninja, et cetera, because Outsider, as a set gave us that option. So yeah,
I honestly think that Assassin is a super good cube hero, and I know that once the first heroes are tired from Jordan's cube, I'll be lobbying for Assassin to be the next inclusion. I think it's a very, very cool archetype to be playing in, specifically Uzuri, to be playing in cube and create some tension for the 6 powers and the early bigger attacks from Bravo. I think that's right, because right now there's nothing really competing for that. Next question from Aladors is: there seems to be almost constant discourse in other TCGs, I wouldn't know, concerning art on sleeves and playmats. First, we're going to make a quick stop here. I don't know what discourse he's referring to, but if it's like the ultra horny anime girl playmats, they can stay the fuck out of games. Personal opinion.
It's actually twofold. So yes, there is some level of concerns about both mature content, but you could also argue things that would make the game feel like an unwelcome space, right? Like you don't want people with swastika sleeves showing up at your event either. So there is the concern for like content, but then there is also the obvious competitive concerns about if you've got very busy sleeves, it can become that much harder to notice if somebody has marked cards, right? Because the patterns might be very intricate, that sort of thing. So
okay, that makes more sense. Should LSS make official guidelines like Pokemon? Didn't know they had them. But apparently it's solid color or official only, or due to the more adult focus of the game, should it stay within reason? I didn't know that Pokemon had guidelines, first off. I guess I don't think there's a reason for official guidelines, just common fucking sense. Like,
how dare you?
Like, I've seen a lot of things that make me go, okay, if I look at that and see there's a problem, that means it's probably making somebody else uncomfortable, because I don't know if you've ever listened to anything I've said, but it's pretty fucking hard to get under this skin in any real way, shape, or form. So if you're getting under my skin in any way, there's somebody else somewhere in this room that's probably actually uncomfortable, and that's not great. And I am also not afraid to say something whenever that happens. So if anybody is uncomfortable at an event by somebody else's shit, or paraphernalia, I guess, I don't know, and you are uncomfortable saying something to them or to the TO, you are more than welcome to approach me, and I will definitely say something. Because the first thing I care about is making sure that people feel welcome, comfortable, and safe at events. That is just something very important to me. And I want to make sure that courtesy is extended to anybody in the community, because I want this game and want this community to feel safe and welcoming. Official guidelines, I didn't know. So solid color and official only feels probably for Pokemon like the right way to go, because it is a game marketed towards younger ages. So it would make sense to have actual official guidelines. But I think that it's not necessarily the more adult focus per se. I mean, more adult than Pokemon is a low bar, right? Like Pokemon is targeted younger on purpose. But within reason is where my brain goes, but I do understand that humanity becomes more and more unreasonable by the day. So we really do have to kind of, as a community, be willing to self-police, and make sure that people know when, okay, this crosses a line.
Yeah.
Go on. That's it? That's all you got?
I mean,
yeah.
I think the LSS already does a good job of empowering TOs and judges. So if there is an issue, I think that right now their policies are to have the judge notify them that they need to re-sleeve if there's an issue, that sort of thing. If they're egregious, then they probably get some sort of warning or whatever. And I think that that's fine for now because it hasn't been a huge issue. I do think that we are in a position where, you know, you could say solid color or official, right? But then it becomes like, well, what's official? It's probably the Dragon Shield art ones because they have the partnership with them. They don't produce their own like some of the other card games do. For example, like Bandai, Battle Spirit Saga, they've got ones that you can win. They're actually like a pretty big deal. But those are also like kind of busy on the back end, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. I feel like because it's already kind of catered towards adults and most adults seem to be capable of using some level of common sense, I think just leaving it up to the judges is fine. Because like if you're somebody who's worried that a judge is going to give you a problem for it, then just use the solids, right? We already have the issue with the foils in the community. Like if I'm being honest, good competitive practice before any event, if you're running foils in your deck, is to go to the judges and say, hey, I'm running foils, you know, do you have any issues with this or do I need proxies? And so if you're already doing that anyway for your deck, there's also no reason you can't say, also, is there any problem with my sleeves or what should I do, right? And then
Sure.
it's the end of the discussion. So I don't know if they need to amend their policy right now.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. That makes sense to me. I have watched top tier players go up to judges in every game that I've been associated with at a competitive level and say, you know, hey, I'm playing this card. Is this an issue? And to go get an answer before the tournament. It's not anything to be afraid of. No one's going to say, if you walk up to a judge and ask if this is a problem, no one's going to call you a cheater. Pretty easy math here.
Right.
So always a good policy with foils. It's also a good policy with sleeves. I am somebody that always uses solid color sleeves unless I'm drafting. Like I have different draft sleeves that like I've won or whatever that I just will continue to use. For some reason, my second place realm event sleeves will not die. I have tried very hard to kill them because every time I look at them, I just hear Jordan in my ear going, nobody fucking cares about who came in second, Logan. But they won't tear, they won't die, they won't gunk up. So they've been my limited sleeves for like a year now. And they have a ton of games on them and just won't, like, Dagon's split immediately. Like we're shredded and done immediately. I split Dragon Shields on a very regular basis and go through cases of them, and yet these fucking things won't die. So I'm pretty sure that Keith somehow put a goddamn voodoo hex on them to make sure that they will always remind me that we couldn't close, but I will keep using them regardless. So and if they do gunk up, obviously, then I would change. I would get rid of them. I know that one of the that was actually at the event that we won those sleeves at. With the sleeves I was using, one of the judges, I believe it was our friend Teague, that came up and was like, hey, you know, on your deck check, this sleeve had to tear in, and I'm like, I split sleeves all the time, and he's like, yep, just replace it, it's all good. I'm like, cool. and replace it, and none the wiser. Nothing nothing else was a problem. But I was just like, these won't die. They will not.
Yeah.
They're just indestructible sleeves to remind me of my mediocrity. Next one, this is a juicy one, I think. So this one might take us a little bit to get through. It's from our friend Big Lou. Shout out to Big Lou. What do you feel is the future of supplemental sets? With Dusk Till Dawn not giving each class/talent some new cards, do you think they might be phased out or could become something different in future releases? I could see them becoming a core set, that's a Magic term, like product that gives support to all classes and talents while providing needed reprints for the next year of play. This might go long, so Darick, I'm going to give you the first bite of the apple.
Good, because mine's actually really short. I don't think that they will ever become the core sets. That's our history packs. That's just going to be your source of the reprints, and it'll be whatever it was for the previous year. They will do it with the intent to give people staples, like we've seen with the history packs already, because the entire point is to onboard players. And so because we're an eternal format game, we don't have to worry about things being, in standard, out of standard, whatever. It's literally just like, hey, this history pack is designed to get people access to the cards that were printed in this time period. That's what they're going to be there for. So I don't think that they're ever going to be that. So with that in mind, supplemental sets will be one of two things. They will either be something that gives a little bit to everything, like we've kind of seen in the past with like Crucible and so forth. However, I think they're more likely going to be like Dusk Till Dawn was going forward. Now, my reasoning is this. Some of our early supplemental sets were also at a time when we just didn't have a lot of heroes and classes. So it's really easy to have fit in a bunch of extra stuff for the Welcome to Rathe heroes, for example, in Crucible, because there were only a few. Now that we have a wide variety of heroes and classes and talents, it's going to become that much harder every supplemental set, because again, these are supposed to be smaller sets to give everything a little bit of something. So instead, I expect them going forward to be like Dusk Till Dawn, where you pick a theme and you enhance that theme. So like this one was light and dark. I expect at some point in the future, we're going to get an Aria supplemental set, right? To revisit those heroes. And it'll probably coincide when it's just after the next, core set that addresses it. But the other reason I think that we're going to have supplemental sets be more like Dusk Till Dawn as well is that the other thing that's happening now in the game that was not happening in the early phases is that we have heroes hitting Living Legend. And as we know, people love their heroes. They're going to be attached to them. I think supplemental sets are great ways to reintroduce versions like we got Prism, while also still allowing the bigger sets, the marquee sets, to introduce us to either brand new characters or brand new areas in Rathe, right? Expand on the lore. And the supplemental sets are just more of a fill in the gaps sort of thing, including the gaps left behind by Living Legend. So I think that Dusk Till Dawn is kind of the blueprint for what we should expect going forward. It's a bit of a turning point for the game, but that's just because the game is maturing now and we're a few years in and we've got a lot more variety and depth.
Yeah. To the shock of probably no one, I do agree with everything you said there. That
it actually shocked me. So
weird. The one thing I do want to point out that is probably super important is I think that you're going to see one supplemental set a year. Just, they're not going to go away. They are what they are. A lot of people, I see a lot of comments that are like, why wasn't this a draftable set? This feels like it's draftable. And I'm like, I count 20 cards in this set that would just break limited, like shatter it. So please no, step one. And that goes to my point. I think that one of the things you get to do in the supplemental sets is print cards that would be terrifying to have in a limited environment, but are still good to have in a constructed environment, because you're not having to balance things to the limited format. You're able to say, okay, I want to make this hero with this cycle of cards. this cycle of cards is toxic as fuck in limited. Okay, we can just put that cycle in a supplemental set. Looking at you, widespreads. Looking at you, leave no witnesses, eradicate, and surgical extraction. Like, those are all limited wreckers. So again, please no, nope, keep those out. But this gives you the ability to print things that would be bad for a limited environment, but you need to give to a constructed environment for heroes to exist or to be, you know, competitive. So we're going to continue to see that. We're going to continue to see it as a way also when we saw this in, I guess we didn't see it in outside. We saw this in Outsiders more than anything else this time around, but it's going to kind of keep playing into the theme. Is they're going to use these as opportunities to also print cards to enhance heroes and enhance classes that feel like they're behind. So in this case, Leviathan feels like she's always been behind. She was born behind. So they use this as an opportunity to make her maybe not suck. And so jury's out on that one. It's also there an opportunity to prove to us that they can balance a rune blade. I'm not convinced they learned how to balance a rune blade.
Viscerai feels pretty balanced. The moment the Blood Sheath went away, he's felt like a normal hero again, and he kind of felt like one before Blood Sheath.
Yeah. Now think if Viscerai was able to play the cards with the Rune Gate mechanic.
Then we would have a problem.
Just please no. Just please never.
Because then oh. I'm just imagining turns with like your opener is like Mordred tied into Mauve Skies into Rune Gate because you just keep going at that point.
This machine gun for $1 billion. Yeah, it's not ideal. But supplemental sets are, because of this being an eternal format card game. Because of the check on eternal card game being the living legend format, I believe that supplemental sets are very necessary. They will not be used to reprint cards. That is 100% what the history packs exist for. And they exist for two reasons. One is to reprint staples and to make sure that those prior sets are accessible to the masses. And two is to be able to print cards in other languages for new and emerging markets. So those are the two real things. Charmer's got his hand up. I don't even know what this means.
So I just want to jump in because there may be listeners saying, hey, I hear what you're saying and it makes sense to me, but we just had a bunch of heralds reprinted in this set. So, you know, if these sets are not for reprints, then why did that happen? And the answer is twofold. One, I think that this is going to be a one-time thing because just like with the serialized cards, I think this was meant to be like a celebration of those heroes, which is why those reprints were, you know, extended art stuff, blah, blah, blah. And two, I also think that this is, again, because we just don't have those, you know, options readily available in history packs, right? So if you're still trying to make a brand new hero and also keep accessibility in mind, then you kind of knock things out in one fell swoop. And also, if you're going to break your rule, this is a great set to do it because you already had the stick and surgical extraction.
Sure did. Yep.
Oh.
I still don't. Okay, so quick aside. Do they not know how math works? Because if you short print something that was already short printed in a Majestic slot, that doesn't make it so that you have created the right number of distribution. Darick?
You're asking me. I don't know. I just work here, man.
Okay. One of the things that I also want to point out here that I forgot to put in the show notes because I'm a fucking idiot is there are going to be other products that are released, like the new product from Tolarian, what is it, Community College? Yeah. Brian. I just keep thinking of Brian because that's his name. And
Well, not
that
all of
they're
us are on
putting
a
out.
first name basis with the professor, Logan. Okay.
I've met him like twice. So no, I'm not on a first name basis,
Well, that's
but
3 times more than me.
weird. But
Listen, I'm a math
negative
genius.
one.
You were just asking me math questions, so I needed to showcase my amazing skills.
They are. This is the reason you work in government.
Yep.
But I think that places like that are also an opportunity to reprint cards that you wouldn't necessarily reprint in History Pack, or where History Pack didn't serve to correct the volume issue, because if you're able to just pay, like, I do, the MSRP is like $69, right? Because nice for that, for the professor set.
Mm-hmm.
And if that $69 gets you an Art of War, an Enlightened Strike, and other cards, it's worth paying for. I mean, just point blank. So if that's the case, then that's a good way to kind of get them into the hands of players, while also, as a business, selling product, right? Like that's
Right.
just a great sell point alongside the brand name that exists there and everything else. So that product is going to sell. No, just point blank, that product will sell. And it's really their first straight up product specifically for multiplayer. So it's going to be, that they sell. Obviously, there's promos that are geared exactly to that. But it's the first time that they're selling something with that in mind. So I'm very interested to see the path they take with it, and how many of those 100 new cards that are going to be in it are actually going to be legal, and also how they were going to play into the mix. I'm not a huge fan of printing cards specifically. I think we discussed this in a listener question a couple weeks ago, of printing cards directly into a product like Classic Battles, because it creates an artificial layer of scarcity, and also a price floor for those cards if they're the only cards that matter.
Right.
So I don't love that part, but I do love that this is going to probably be another big boom point for the game, is this set coming out. So I've always said, since day one here, 84 weeks ago now, that Flesh and Blood is on sale, and it's not getting any cheaper anytime soon. And I have yet to be wrong. So I guess I'm just going to keep saying that until I am.
I mean, I'm trying to take your advice and get a hold of all the things that matter to me, but I'm still trying to chase down this Regicide. A good friend of mine says he has a lead on it, but I haven't gotten any updates.
Oh, I have one.
Else, so.
Yeah, I got that taken care of for you. Don't worry about it.
Oh, okay.
Forgot to tell you that part. Anyway. So it's fine. Come on, I take care of my boo. Last question is from Dom, good personal friend of mine, and also friend of the show. Any predictions for what decks will be shaking up the first tournament of the Dusk Till Dawn Legal Classic Constructed season? So the example he gave was how Azalea and Azuri performed at the Chicago Brawl. We get our first taste of this at Battle Hardened Cincy, correct?
Yeah, this weekend.
Next weekend. Yeah, this weekend. So release weekend, Classic Constructed. I personally love release weekend Classic Constructed events, because you get to see the crazy shit that people are coming up with before it's like refined and whittled down. I think that there's going to be a very good Levia deck that somebody figures out how to abuse using Levia Redeemed as a catch-up mechanic. And They're going to tear shit up because of the fact that Levia now has 46 plus at minimum 7, at maximum 12 health. So it basically having above rate everything, very Jordan Kennedy-esque, and then being able to then flip into a catch-up game late so that they just don't die to their own shenanigans. And I think that type of deck is probably going to be very well positioned. We'll see how much the Bullseye Bracers affect Lexi and Azalea. I think as Mikey put it, it does have a very big impact both ways. I trust his opinion on that. I know a lot of people have said it's much ado about nothing. I've had a lot of people say the sky is falling. Truth is always somewhere in between. I also think that people are going to jam Briar because you can jam Briar. You still get to do that. No one says you can't. And I have also seen quite a few interesting Vincent and Viscerai lists float up. I've been working on Vincent, and I think I'm about 6 cards off. But the deck, even in its very raw, unpolished state, feels like it does insanely powerful things. I could see that deck popping off. With no Oldhim, it's going to be a paradise for aggressive decks for a hot minute. So let's, I'm curious how all that works out.
My hot take is I think somebody's actually going to figure out how to break New Prism.
I would be very fascinated if somebody could pull that off.
I think that honestly the biggest drawback is just her health. I think she does incredibly powerful things.
Yes, absolutely.
And I also think, as weird as this sounds, this might be the best meta to just try to abuse a library.
Oh no, I agree with that.
And I think that specifically that new Prism, the more aggressive play style, if you suddenly start getting 5 and 6 card hands and you're giving your Heralds go again, like it's kind of a nightmare. So I don't think that she's going to show up and dominate the event. I think that there will likely be 1, maybe 2 players that are successful with it, because I think that that's going to take some time to refine, but that's what I'm personally looking forward to. I think somebody is going to try to solve the puzzle.
All right. So what's your pick for the hero that wins Battle Hardened Cincinnati?
That wins it?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I think this might be a bit of a hot take, but I
got one too. So you want to try to do it at the same time on 3?
All right.
1, 2, 3.
1. Lexi.
Dromai. Okay. So you think Lexi?
Yep. I think
okay.
There's going to be
a take.
I mean, I just think that the deck was already really powerful. People have a lot more reps on it. I don't think it lost a lot with the BNS announcement. And while this is definitely going to be I think an aggro friendly meta, if you're trying to revisit some of the other aggro decks, the Fais, the Katsus, even Briar, unless you're somebody who already had a ton of reps on those anyway, I think that you just go with the familiar choice. So I think that Lexi is still good enough to do it. And if somebody like a Brody Spurlock shows up who's been playing a bunch of Lexi lately, like it's hard for me to bet against that. So
he's going to be too busy lifting with Brendan Patrick. I think it's Dromai. I think Dromai's worst matchup is gone. People have spent the entire time that Dromai has been legal sleeping on the powerful things that deck does. And I think that I think there will be a lot of Lexi. And Dromai does not have the worst Lexi matchup, and the hand is the capable pilots. So I feel like this could easily be the time where Dromai actually gets to close an event. I hate saying that, mainly because I just hate illusionists, and I'm don't want certain insufferable humans that may or may not listen to the show on a regular basis to get a big head about things.
I think Dromai's in a great spot, and I try not to say it a bunch because I know that I'm biased, but I legitimately also still feel like both Bravo and Uzuri are in really good spots right now as well. I think Uzuri, because it's an aggressive deck that has the ability to put in the sixes, you know, if you run into the Prisms experimenting, if you run into the Dromais, you can do really well. And because I expect a bunch of aggressive decks to pop up, Bravo has the right level of disruption and also is really good into Dromai and really good into Herald Prism. I think that he has a chance to show up. The problem is that he's not a sexy hero to play, and he doesn't play the same way as Oldhim. If you're somebody who played a bunch of Oldhim and you think you can just
No.
like easy switch to Bravo, that's not how it works. So I don't expect any Bravos to do well, but it would not surprise me if they did, because I do think that like fundamentally the tool set he has is well positioned right now. So like, you know, if like a Clark showed up or whatever, I don't know if he's making the trip down, but like I could see him top 8ing the event for sure.
I think that Bravo and Uzuri are a cycle away from being in that spot. They're probably good choices. I don't think they're great choices. I think at the next event, they are great choices. So I believe that that's the level 1 to what will become the new level 0. And they will show up in the next event. This one, I believe, is going to be a Lexi field with a popped off Levia, a popped off Vinset or two. I for whatever reason, my brain always makes sure that it makes room for Kano, mainly because I'm always scared to death of dying to Kanos because I'm so good at it. And then I feel like there's going to be a Dromai that runs roughshod. It may be slightly new tech. It might be no new tech. It might just be so like an example, right? Like just use case example that there are matchups where Diadem of Dream State is, you know, swings a matchup. I'm throwing a card name out there because I don't fucking know.
No, you want to know what I actually think swings that matchup? Like I do still expect a healthy amount of both Lexi and Azalea to be in the field, but I think that with Dromai, the Bracers ban actually hits them pretty hard because you can pivot to try to go with like a burn them all finisher, and like let's be honest, that's going to be free damage at that point. They're not going to bring in an extra thing. They've been relying on the free AB for forever, and it's going to feel bad to go with anything else. And so I think that that's very easily a spot where Dromai can help close that gap quite a bit. Yeah.
So I think at some point in time, if Dromai wins this, Dromai starts to become the level 0 deck. With then your beat level 0, you play things like Bravo and Uzuri. Then your level 2, like it's weird that Lexi goes to level 2, but then Lexi goes down to level 2, and then we start seeing the shakeup again. Those aren't tiers, people. That's a different conversation. But it's how, you know, how the hierarchy of what beats what. It's the rock paper scissors kind of matchups.
Triangle. Yeah.
So let's see how that shakes up, but that's my feeling on it. Well, Darick, we managed to put together an episode with, I'm not going to say it. We put together an episode, leaving it that.
Listen, it's already a step up. You know, we were talking about the technical issues that we had last week. I want you to know this is how much Logan like had to suffer. He keeps a document filled with all of the show notes from like all time forever, all 84 weeks except for week 83.
Right.
It just doesn't even exist in the show notes because we don't talk about episode 83.
Nope. I went and I was like, okay, I went to copy and the add new notes. I'm like, actually, no, I'm not. I'm just going to delete this. So I did. I felt better. So my show notes now go from 82, which is the one with Flake, where the entire show notes just say, fuck it, we ball, to episode 84. 83, nope.
Yeah.
We have 86 to 83. Which maybe that I haven't decided what to name this episode yet. Maybe it's that. But again, thank you all for joining us. We do appreciate each and every one of you. We also, probably a little bit more than everybody else, but not necessarily, appreciate our patrons. So let's give a quick shout out to them. Our associate producers are Andy, Kenny, and May. Our executive producers on up are C-Dubs, Josh, Lance Goodthrust, Matt Two Tokes, Papa Mike, which I got your name completely and horrifically wrong, but it was so funny about how horrible I did that they still up their patron tier. So at least I suck enough to get more money. Alex, Ed, Philip, Rich, Taylor, and Trevor. If you're interested in joining our Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/fleshandpod. Links in the show notes. There are 6 tiers. I don't fucking know. It's some number. It's above 4. That you can, I guess patrons are now called our audience, which is the dumbest fucking thing. I'm still calling you patrons. So you can join there. Link is in the show notes. You can also, if you want to contact the show, you can email me at fleshandpod@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at fleshpod. All these links will be in the show notes. Please like and subscribe on YouTube. Give us 5 stars on Spotify. Some people have rated us lower than that. I'm pretty sure it's just Darick, but I'm not 100% sure. What else do I have? If you do have any complaints, please send them to fleshandpod@gmail.com. The link is in the show notes. That will redirect to Flesh and Pod Legal, which is a subsidiary of Black Hole Legal, which is still the trash can next to Jordan Kennedy's desk. Darick, where can they find you?
They can find me not playing Flesh and Blood, apparently, since you like to beat that horse to death. Listen, I like to play this game. I love this game.
Play the fucking game then and talk about it.
I spent all weekend trying.
All weekend. And
I really
could not get it done.
No, people just don't like me.
That's not true at all.
But they don't like me enough to play Flesh and Blood with me, so I don't know what to tell you.
It's my fault because if I would have been there, you would have had 8.
Probably.
See? It's all my fault.
We did have 7 at one point, all sitting in a circle.
Yep. If I just would have been there, you can draft with 7, by the way. You don't need 8.
I mean, you're not wrong, but I'm not
the best part is you would have got the bye. That's the best part.
I'm not running the show there, right? It wasn't my call. I had said I will draft with one other person. I was ready to go.
Apparently.
So, anyway, I told Keith at one point that Flake and I will draft on top of a moving train if you'll let us.
That kind of sounds fun.
Yeah. So anyway, if you're looking where you can find me, I am just Charmer. That's Charm3R on Twitch, on YouTube. I'm also now on Blue Sky, and I'm that Charmer on Twitch and Threads, and I don't know. There's an infinity stone's worth of social media, but if you just search for Charmer Charm3R, I'll probably pop up. That's the easiest way to find me.
Yeah, it really is. You can find me on Twitter at Logan Peterson. I'm also the person behind all of the Flesh and Pod social media. So if you comment on something on YouTube and then somebody from Flesh and Pod comments back, that's just me. The best place to find me is in our Discord. That link is in the show notes. I will respond to each and every one of you that makes a comment towards me. I will even go in and check on the Pickle Posse every now and again. I went in there to make sure they weren't talking shit about me, and they were. So I had to go in and respond. Yes, I saw the other shit talking. I just haven't deigned to respond yet. I'm on Threads. I didn't have an Instagram account, but apparently there's some other fucker that is on Instagram that has my name. So I know what it's like to be like you now.
Yeah.
So I guess on Threads, that's fucking god awful. So on Threads, I'm Logan Peterson 80. I'm followed by Pat Smashgood on Threads. I don't know how the fuck he found me because it's not the same username as everywhere else. But at any rate, I do have a Threads account. I don't have a Blue Sky invite yet because Britt apparently hates me. I don't know. Loves Charmer enough, I guess. You see, people do like you. It's not a joke.
Yeah, but not enough to play Flesh and Blood with me.
No,
I
but
don't
they
know.
give you a Blue Sky invite.
Yeah, but I don't know
What's
if it's
more valuable?
because I am too good at the game, or if they don't want to play with me because it's like when you play with your little brother and they don't understand the rules and you have to like keep track of your life totals with crayon or something. I don't know, but
We can play at Gen Con.
we can play at Gen Con, as well as play some other games. My son is very excited to be, meeting more of my friends. He was upset that you weren't there this weekend, so he's looking forward to it.
I really wish that you guys could come to dinner at Iozo's, but
well, I mean, we're going to make it there one way or the other, but
yeah, it's not on my reservation day, sadly. But
yeah,
but yeah, so I'll be at Gen Con all 4 days. I really look forward to trying some Star Wars Unlimited. That'll be something to rub in Flake's face, which is usually the only reason I do things.
Yeah,
but
good enough reason.
It's a good enough reason. No, I'm very interested. My feeling on Lorcana, and I guess this will be like my final thought on things this week. My thought on Lorcana after seeing it play and then jamming a little bit is it's too simplistic. It's like playing solitaire, and honestly, if something is going to be solitaire, I might as well be jerking off, and that's just that's just miserable. No one wants to be doing that if they can help it. So I don't know that I've been too interested in Lorcana. I think I'm coming around on Star Wars Unlimited mechanically. It does seem like it has more to it than the cards kind of lended initial credence to. So I'm excited to demo that over there. I will be giving, if you are at Gen Con and you're interested in Alpha Clash, find me, because I will be walking around with Alpha Clash promos to give out to people. They don't have a booth, but I have the promos to give out, so I will be giving them out all weekend. Yeah, I guess that's it. The first episode of the Alpha Clash podcast will be recording tomorrow and getting out sometime this week. So that is called the Clash Ground. I'll put that link in the show notes too, as soon as there is a link to put in the show notes. But it'll come across the RSS feeds and everything else like you normally do. Just search for the Clash Ground later this week, and you should see episode 1. You will do not expect the same fucking shenanigans and chicanery you get here. It is not the same. It'll be
worse.
It'll be more on the rails than this one is in most cases, and I have been told to tone the fuck down. And not tone the fuck down, but tone the usage of the word fuck down. So.
And it wasn't me.
It was not you.
Just so we're
This is
clear.
correct. You for some reason have decided that reining me in is not on your to-do list. And I honestly thought that you would have gone the opposite direction on that one, but here we are. Instead, you just let me be as unhinged as I want to be. I got nothing else, buddy. You got anything else?
No, that's it. I think we should get out of here before something crashes.
Before a catastrophic collapse. All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We will talk to you again next week. Bye.